In the 1830s, the area around Niagara Falls was still mostly wilderness.
Nate McMurray,
Just coming in.
Sound of Niagara podcast. I'm here with Mark Shear. I'll introduce him in a second. He is a renowned reporter, but I want you to listen to this first.
In 1827, promoters sent a ship full of animals over the falls. They'd advertised that it would be ferocious animals of the forests: panthers, wildcats, wolves. Instead, the cargo included a buffalo, 2 foxes, a raccoon, a dog, and 15 geese. Didn't matter. Everybody made money. The town of Niagara Falls had barely been settled for 2 decades.
This is from This American Life,
exploitation
about 25 years ago.
For nearly 2 centuries since then. And what's surprising about it really is how unsuccessful it's been. Power plants fell into the river, bridges collapsed, deals were struck that benefited no one. If the classic story of America is the story of people who started with nothing, pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, made something of themselves, the story of Niagara Falls is the opposite story. Here they started with something big, something huge, but didn't build anything lasting from it. The modern history of Niagara Falls can be divided roughly into 3 phases. The schemers who came in trying to exploit the falls for tourism, how their dreams rose and fell. But that's not the story we're here to tell today. Then there are the schemers who came in trying to exploit the falls for industry. By the 20th century, they built hydroelectric power plants, and factories that used that power, that cheap power, moved in. But then those factories left, decimated by the same economic forces that ravaged the industries in most of the Rust Belt states. Forces so powerful they can destroy a town, even a town with one of the world's natural wonders in it. But that's not the story we're here to tell today either. We're here to tell the story of the 3rd phase of Niagara's life. The people who live in the aftermath of those dreams that have been dreamt and lost. Who live in present-day Niagara Falls, a city like many cities around the country, blessed at some point with natural advantages and resources that somehow fell from grace, fell apart. A town full of people trying to make sense of what's happened, living in the aftermath of what's happened. Some have made their peace with what Niagara is. Some who haven't.
I haven't, Mark. I haven't.
Wow.
I struggle with it every
Wow.
day. It's a powerful piece. If you get a chance to listen to the whole thing, it is one of the best radio pieces I've ever heard in my life. I don't agree with everything in it, but I think it's really great. Mark Shear, tell all the people who you are.
Well, I'm a reporter with the Niagara Gazette currently, and the Lockport Union Sun and Journal in Lockport. It's a sister paper. I worked for Investigative Post in Buffalo for about 2 years before coming back to the Gazette. I've been somehow, by a miracle, a active reporter in Western New York since the late 90s.
Let's just talk about that for a second. It is a miracle.
It is a miracle.
Because this is a place.
I made no money doing this, by the way, but
you listen, for those listening, Mark Shear is, for my money, maybe the best reporter we have in Western New York ever. I'm going to say that ever. You're quite amazing. Go ahead.
I've just kept at it. You know, that's been my thing. I just kept at it. I started in Medina in Orleans County in like 1997 or 98, which, by the way, was really fascinating. I wrote about, like, you know, a bank robbery, a problem at the hospital with the finances that was really bad. There were drug deals gone bad. There were rogue cops being investigated for stealing drug dealers' boats and things like that.
I'm going to interject quickly on some of this stuff, because I think people in America assume this stuff doesn't exist, that everything works, that there's no corruption, that they can rely on the systems and institutions we have. But in your experience, that's not always true, right?
I think that people have really come to... Actually, I kind of think it's the opposite now. I think a lot of people have lost so much faith in their government and the structure of everything. They've just... And it's a big problem because they sort of check out and they just see a lot of, like, it's just not working for them. You know, Democrats, Republicans, there are always those people who are really, you know, the party cheerleaders and they're part of all this stuff. But if we really look around, I mean, especially in Western New York,
get it.
You could change to the next party, and where do we go? I mean, what do
they
we
work
do
to, like, listen, they work together. People don't realize it on a local level. I'm against Trump, I'm for this. It's all show. Behind the scenes, they're all buds. And you may think that's great. It's not great, because mostly that means we're making deals to help our teams. It doesn't mean they're making deals to help you. And I don't want to be too pessimistic here, but I think, let's go back to you first before I get into the details. You're an incredible reporter because you challenge power and you do it not always usually with no fanfare whatsoever, often under the radar. You write really insightful pieces, emotional pieces, pieces with character, pieces about real people in the area. You love Niagara Falls. I think, are you a lifelong resident of Niagara Falls?
No, actually, I grew up in Lancaster. I've been in the Falls since 1999.
Wow, it's a long time, though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know when you officially get your membership card or whatever, because I still get that a lot. Were you born in the Falls? Did you grow up in the Falls? But I've been there long enough, I think, to know. Well, I mean, I just have a feel for the place. I think I've said this so many times, I think it's a national tragedy because it's such a marquee place. If you go anywhere in the world and mention Niagara Falls, everybody knows what you're talking about.
It's the best. I mean, I say people all the time, I've been to dozens of countries. In every country I went to, if there's a home with a middle-class family, they have a picture of somebody in front of Niagara Falls.
Right. They've been on the Main of the Mist or something,
I tell people there's more people that come to Niagara Falls every single year than the pyramids, than the Eiffel Tower, than the Great Wall of China. It is arguably the #1 tourist destination in the world.
Right.
And the Buffalo News seems to write more about Glen Falls or certainly Canal Side than they do about Niagara Falls.
Yeah. Well, the state park is amazing in a lot of ways, and I think it's a tremendous experience for people. I actually had a conversation with Michael Clary, who is our movie reviewer, who's a pretty well-known movie reviewer. He's been doing it for many years. And he was talking to people who felt that, like, that experience for them was sort of enough, which is like saying, once they rode the Main of the Mist and they saw the falls and everything, that they didn't really need to go out into the city, which is kind of like suggesting that that's maybe why the city is in the shape it's in. It's not doing as well as it probably could be. It was just a thought. It was just a conversation we were having about it. But
we could talk about why the city's not doing so well in a second. But I want to go a little bit more about you. You write for the Niagara Gazette currently. Mm-hmm. Niagara Gazette is still in print circulation.
We still have a newspaper.
Yep.
In Niagara Falls, New York, and in Lockport, New York.
Where is it printed?
It is printed in North Tonawanda on River Road, where the old Tonawanda News used to be.
Where I used to be a newspaper man, boy, and go there and pick up my papers and get my paycheck. That's amazing. It's printed locally, unlike the Buffalo News. It's printed in Cleveland now, which is sad. I'm not trying to celebrate that. It's sad.
We could have 42 podcasts about the newspaper business.
Right.
I can talk all day, but yeah, I mean, we're still printed locally.
Good for you, Niagara Gazette. Way to go.
The Gazette is doing well from what I know. I mean, I don't know everything, but financially, as I understand it.
It's printed.
Yes.
Daily?
It's 5 days a week.
Yeah,
now.
5 days a week. Someone was arguing.
In my opinion, we committed a terrible sin by getting rid of the Sunday paper. I think the Sunday paper is hugely important, but
me too.
That was a corporate decision. They moved to a Saturday weekend paper,
which is more of like a lifestyle thing, right?
I guess. I mean, I don't even remember why we did it. It's just one of those things that I think they did it at other papers, and it became a thing. And
yeah.
I still believe people like a Sunday newspaper.
I do. But to be perfectly frank, I've canceled most of my physical newspapers now. And I hate to say that, but I have. It's just easier to do it on my phone.
Yeah.
But I will go by a Niagara Gazette often, and especially when you've written something that I want to read, and I hear about it from people. People say, "Did you read what Mark wrote?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go check it out." You're an incredible writer. You do a great job. Let's just talk about something. We're going to talk a lot about Niagara today, Niagara Falls, okay? Mm-hmm. But I want to jump into some stories you worked on. The OTB stuff, okay? Now, I'm just going to do a quick nutshell review of what happened with the OTB. So there's a guy named Maziarz, right? State Senator Maziarz. He was beloved. You know this, right? In my home, in North Tonawanda, where I grew up, he was like the king.
He was the senator.
And people loved him. He's kind of like a Bilbo Baggins type guy, like very kind face, small guy. He was a town clerk, right, of North Tonawanda. He became a state senator. He became extremely powerful. He did some fun stuff. He brought Nick Lewenda here to walk over the falls. That was part of his work. He worked on that. He was close with Pataki. He went to Pataki and he said, "Hey, we have the OTB. No, we don't have the OTB. We have the, Batavia Downs racetrack. It's harness racing. It's dying. We need to put slots in there." So they passed legislation to put slots in there and to create a regional off-track betting corporation, which is a quasi-public private organization. And this organization basically had as its structure the president of the board of this board, or this what was his official title, or what is the official title? The guy that runs it, basically.
Well, there's a CEO and president, and then there's a chairman of the board. So there's a board that represents the communities that are attached to OTB, and those are appointed people who represent, say, for example, Erie County, Niagara County, and then there is a hired executive who serves as the CEO and president, who sort of runs the place.
So to explain that, to give more color commentary on that, it means that the board, the people that ran the OTB, were selected by the rural chairs. Now, Maziar is a smart guy. He realized Republican Party power is in the rural areas. So the rural bodies, the rural legislatures, I would assume, they picked the people that were on this board. They got to, and that is the only person that the chair of the OTB answered to. He answered to this board that was selected from his own political acolytes, right? There was no other governing body.
Officially, it would be like the legislature. So in Niagara County, the Niagara County legislature, which has been for years Republican controlled.
I think there's 3 Republican Democratic chairs on it right now.
I think it has 3, yes.
Yeah, so you have...
Majority Republicans, so they would select, and they did select, the current representative, and each county does that along the way. And you have the city of Buffalo, so the city of Buffalo puts a person in. But the vast majority of them are from rural counties.
So I know Maziarz personally. I never was involved with him politically, but I know him personally. I grew up kind of with him. I mean, I didn't know him as a kid, but he ran the Republican Party. And as a kid, believe it or not, I was a young, clean-cut Eagle Scout type, and I would sell beef on weck at the Republican Party tent at Canal Side, or was it Canal Days? What is it? Canal Fest. Sorry.
Yep.
And so I knew of him as a bigger-than-life figure, even though he's a very small guy. He was kind of a bigger-than-life figure, and as an adult, I met him again. But he had a falling from grace. We don't have to get in the details of that. But he basically was kicked out of the party, kicked out of everything, almost went to prison. And his Sith apprentice, Henry Wojciech, took over the OTB. And this is a guy that Maziarz once upon a time loved and was rearing up to run everything that Maziarz had built.
Right.
And Henry was also from North Tonawanda. And Henry was the chair of the Republican Party in Niagara County. And so this guy leaves that position and takes over this highly lucrative position at the casino. And, allegedly, mayhem ensues. The comptroller did print a report about the stuff that was happening at the casino, such as going to sporting events, giving away perks. What am I missing?
Well, that's really where it kind of started, where the tickets to the Bills games, they had suites. They had a suite at the Bills stadium, Sabres arena, concerts, those sorts of things. They were using for themselves, for family members, that sort of thing, the tickets, the comps for certain things, the beer, the drinks, the food, all those sorts of extras that go along with that. That was part of the report from the controller's office.
And allegedly giving contracts to friends, and, they had this, and using public cars for private use, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, Henry Wojciech had a vehicle and was supposed to keep mileage and all those sorts of things, and it became a question of, did he actually do that? Did he maintain his mileage? He did, I think, end up submitting mileage and so forth.
And then they built a hotel, right? They built a hotel with...
Well, they didn't actually... They inherited that hotel. Someone else built the hotel, but then they purchased the hotel. So the gaming corporation bought the hotel from the private developer. So has the hotel.
So people that weren't exactly... That didn't seem to be, to me, based on my review of what Kevin Hardwick and others wrote about it, they didn't seem to be involved in the hotel building business. Built a hotel that we can question whether there was a need for the hotel or not, and then the debt for that hotel was assumed by the OTB.
OTB purchased it and now runs it, yes.
And are people staying there? Is it full?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know how well it does.
So he became a little bit of a king out there, and the comptroller report is pretty damning. But nothing comes of it. There's may have been investigations. There's always allegations of investigations, but nothing comes of it. Instead, the Democratic Party says, we're going to fix this, right? So what do?
They brought in Byron Brown, former mayor of Buffalo.
Well, first
who,
they pass.
by the way,
they pass a law and do a press conference, and they say we're going to fix the OTB. We believe it's corrupt, but all they do is shift the power. They say, okay, from now on, the legislators are not going to pick. We're going to have a different process for picking the control of this, and it's going to be the Democrats that control it.
Yeah, they gave more of a weighted vote to, say, for example, the city of Buffalo.
And the city of Rochester.
Right, which means Democrats would have more say over who's running the place.
And so who do they give the job to?
Byron Brown.
Byron Brown,
mayor,
the mayor that was mayor for 20 years and left office with a $50 million debt for the city of Buffalo.
Right.
And then let me just take a tangent. If you guys are there with me still, let me just take a tangent here because it sounds like, well, this is typical corruption. It's not really typical. There's an article in the New York Review of Books by Jim Schultz called American Kleptocracy, all about this stuff. And so we get this my entire life. I remember meeting Byron Brown when I was in law school. And they said, this guy is the future. He's a great leader. I was like, okay, good. I want Buffalo to succeed. And Byron Brown, he loses to India Walton, self-described socialist, just like we have right now in New York City with Mom Donnie. And she wins this election against him. And then all hell breaks loose. The powers of heaven and hell are unleashed upon India. She is completely obliterated in the general election because the Democrats and the Republicans unite to destroy her. Correct?
Yeah, it's pretty close to correct, I would say.
I think it's correct. Listen, India.
I mean, we know that the write-in was heavily supported by, like Carl Palladino and so forth, and so yeah. I mean, one of the interesting things for me in all these years is a lot of people talk about wanting new people in office.
Yeah, right. They always say that.
And then these new people come along, and they sort of run into the machine, whether it's the Republicans or the Democrats or both. And they make it very difficult for them to succeed, or they turn them into the villain.
Right.
And
happened to me. But nothing as compared to what happened to India. India was really vilified.
And my thing is always the same. It's America. There are no qualifications to be the mayor of Buffalo or any place else. If you want to be on a city council, you should be able to be on a city council. And they always sort of assign this, the collective they. They assign this, well, this person's capable, but this person isn't. Yeah. And, Byron Brown is a very good example, I think, because Byron Brown was actually the city's of Niagara Falls senator for a time.
That's right. I forgot that. He's been in office his entire life. Wow.
Then he went to Buffalo. He was there all those years. And to your point, he leaves Buffalo with a massive deficit.
Wait, not to mention that the county executive and him oversaw the death of 50 plus people in a snowstorm. And we forget about that. But that snowstorm, it was a terrible snowstorm. But that is one of the worst natural disasters in American history. People were being found frozen in their cars. They didn't call a travel ban. They didn't manage it well. And we in Buffalo just don't want to talk about this. We want to forget that this even happened. To me, look up the numbers of the hurricanes or floods or anything. Losing that many people in a 2-day span is shocking. And we're Buffalo. We should be prepared to handle snow.
I've said this so many times.
There should be a memorial to those people, by the way. Keep going.
I think Buffalo, Western New York should be the epicenter of road reconstruction.
Absolutely.
And plowing. I mean, we should be finding ways to do things that are promoting new technology or something. I mean, I get so tired of the same cycle of.
I know.
We don't have enough salt. We don't have enough plow drivers. We don't have enough plows.
We have no rescue vehicles. We have no warming stations. Nobody held the utilities accountable for having no shielding on their buildings. The reason why there's no accountability is because people are numb. They don't believe that they first of all you're addicted to party politics and you think that it's wrong to question a Democrat because what's happening in the country right now. But I'm going to tell you right now, the only way anything changes is if you question those in power. And when people like this county executive or all of them really, they've been in counter for decades. So this guy Byron Brown gets on now. He's making commercials with who? With Wojciech, the former head of the Republican Party, the heir to Maziarz, the king of the Republican Party, is now on television making commercials with Byron Brown, the former Democratic savior of Western New York. Isn't it bizarre? For a casino, no less. For a rural casino.
Right. Well, I mean, the whole thing is this whole idea of OTB. I find this to be true a lot of times when the media, and by the way, when we talk about who's to blame for conditions, say in like Western New York, I think the media deserves a lot of blame.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think it's a lot about the sort of cheerleading that goes on instead of the hard asking of questions that need to be answered. Is this working? Why are we doing this? And like in an entity like OTB, what you find, I think this would be true of a lot of places. If you put a reporter in places where no one's been reporting for a while, you tend to find things that are, I don't know if you'd say shocking, but interesting, enlightening when you come across the idea that a public entity has a suite for Buffalo Bills games that is supposed to be for patrons, right? The idea is we're going to give the patrons the tickets and they're going to come back to gamble because they like the experience. Right. And then what you find is officers went with whoever or
for birthday parties, family birthday. That's the allegation.
And they bought like drinks, right? So it's essentially public money, and then they had drinks and all that stuff. Right. And honestly, when we first found out about this, a great guy, one of my closest friends and allies, Phil Gambini, did a lot of this reporting. And I told him when we were sort of first down this road, I said, Phil, I think the idea that public people are eating like $50 pizzas on the public dime will outrage people.
Yeah.
But I was honestly wrong.
Nobody cares. They're like, yeah, shut up.
I don't know that. It's that they don't know what to do about that. They may be angry really about it, but they don't know how to funnel that into something.
They feel they feel like they don't even have a right to be angry. It seems like, and then it's like the Trump stuff, right? I know that. Listen, Mark is not political like me. He doesn't. But like I feel with Trump, there's like no personal accountability, so he keeps doing whatever he wants. And then in Western New York, it's the same thing. There's no pushback to the party leadership. They're in office for decades. They do this kind of stuff. They do this kind of horse trading rather, and there's no pushback. So they feel they can do anything. Because now Wojciech he was going to make $300 an hour consulting, right, in Lewiston after he left the OTB. He left with a $300,000 compensation package, severance package. It was wild, right? And then the thing I remember with your reporting is you'd follow him around and you'd be like, hey, with a camera in his face, and be like, hey, what do you think of this? Or what do you think about this, Henry?
Yeah.
And what would he say?
Well, there was one time, very memorable time for me. I met him at the NAC, which is Niagara Arts and Cultural Center. He was on the radio, and he came out, and I tried to talk to him, and he just kept walking away. And I just kept asking him questions, and
he acted like he didn't even hear it.
And, you know, with things like that, there is a school of thought that that's like gotcha journalism, and I guess maybe it is. But the reality is in modern, I don't know if this is true of, you know, decades ago or whatever, but when you call an office or you try to speak to someone, very often you either are ignored or you get some sort of handler because they all have one of the great cottage industries of Western New York is government public relations. Right. I mean, the state, the federal government, the local governments, they all have these PR people, these people who represent the people you want to talk to and can actually have input on things. And they are the gatekeeper, and they keep you away from these people. So if you don't, I just went to see the governor when she was in Lewiston at the Power Authority, not to talk about her nuclear plant that she wants to build, but to ask her, do you think the city of Niagara Falls should pursue an arena?
What did she say? What did she say?
Well, it was interesting because I actually asked her about the data center, too, because these are our two big projects. She only talked about the arena. She did not talk about the data center. But in response to the arena, she said, well, I haven't really seen the feasibility study. It's not my place to put my thumb on the scale of a project at this point. So she, again, kind of punted.
Yeah, right.
But I'm there because she's, to me, a very important person in a $200 million arena project or a $1.5 billion data center project that the city's supposedly getting.
Right.
If she's not on board with either of these things, what are we doing? So I keep trying to find her and ask her.
She's never going to give you a straight answer. So
if I call the office, they just say,
so
she's not available, right? I mean,
so the Henry stuff, he did this. There's lots of other things we could talk about, but that's the broad brushstrokes of the story. But you did a great job. You asked him questions. You can call it gotcha journalism, but when no one was asking him anything, it was good to see that he was refusing to answer a reporter. And I think it's become so common, even in Western New York now, for people not to answer questions. And one more thing too, I also find it more I feel I personally, for putting my ideas out there, get more pushback from the general public than some of these elected officials. Like they are more
because you're approachable. They can reach you.
They can see me. They can talk to me.
Media,
right.
And they can, I think there's a feeling of that this whole crew of people is just sort of untouchable. And in a lot of ways they sort of are, I mean, I'm not, it's the part of the job they don't really teach you is like the ability to be like unliked or disliked on that level, or
right. It's hard.
Have a person, but to be honest with you, I've always just tried to be professional. And it's funny, like Byron Brown, I saw him after he got hired, and we chatted outside for a little while. And I know Byron from when he was a senator in Niagara Falls. I've known him for a long time. I know him on a certain level, and we were talking. But, at the end of the day, I'm still going to ask him the harder questions because it's what needs to be asked. It's what the community needs us to ask.
Well, he should listen. And if I was in office, or I was in office before, I loved when people asked me questions because I had answers. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to talk to the media. I wanted to say, this is what I'm doing this for. You can judge me for it, but I want you to know why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they don't want to talk. And they don't want to talk because they're ashamed of what they're doing most of the time. So Henry was making, I don't know how much when he was running the OTB. I've never met the guy, by the way.
It was six figures. I have
a family member who loves him. I do, because he says he's a nice guy.
Well, it's the case with all of these people, Byron Brown, and there are a lot of people who rely or have connections to people who are in these kind of positions who can offer other jobs, and they help your family, and they have contracts, and they have all these things. So
you don't want to get blackballed in the city with no economy.
I say this all the time. We have a tremendous public sector economy, which is our biggest problem. So many people want or are in on this thing of, well, my sister has a job at the city and so does my cousin.
Right. I'm not going to talk.
I'm going to go out and help this mayor stay elected because, and that's our economy. And these are the best jobs here, by the way.
That's the city of Buffalo. It's the city of Niagara Falls. I don't question authority because my mom or my sister or my dad or myself works for the system.
Right, and there's not good options. That's the thing about having a lack of a private sector economy.
Right.
If you don't, you end up working at the hotel or something. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that. But like in Niagara Falls, I ask this question all the time. Where do people work? The big idea was the casino. The casino was going to lift all boats.
Sure.
If you work at the casino, and I know people who have, you don't make a tremendous living. I mean, you get by and it's fine. But if anybody remembers, when we opened the casino, the people who work there were going to buy all the crappy houses and fix them up in Niagara Falls and live in Niagara Falls. That was a pitch.
We'll get that. I want to get to all this, but 40. So the average median household income in Niagara Falls is $40,000. The average national median household income nationally is $70,000. So when you have a guy making 6+ figures, it gets a $300,000 severance package. You'd think people would be like, "What the heck is going on here?" For a casino no offense, kind of in the middle of nowhere, but nobody. I know you're saying nobody care. I can't remember what you said. You said people.
Again, I think people care.
They can't. They feel powerless.
I have a lot of people who say "good job," and they'll say you did a good job, which I'm happy about. That's the biggest thing I can do is try.
But the people who follow me are very, very politically attuned, and I'll share stories that you've written about the OTB, and there's 1 like.
Yeah.
2 likes. Yeah. And I'm like, this guy's killing himself, exposing real fraud or real corruption in Western New York, not just the OTB, all over the place. And they come back and there's people are like, yeah, I don't care.
Because again, I think most people aren't like us, Nate. They're not, they understand it, but they sort of also, they're more concerned about, is Josh Allen going to get 3 touchdowns?
It's easier.
And it is easier. And I understand that. I like to kind of prepare people or let people know. I mean, all this is public resources. That's my biggest thing. Well, while your kids may be struggling to find a job or something, their kids have jobs that they might not show up
Absolutely. And by the way, or their friend from high school, is in the case of the OTB, right?
Whoever it is. It's these are big resources. When you can pay somebody $300,000 a year, you have big resources. By the way, I don't know if we looked around Western New York, who's making $300,000
Nobody.
or better? I mean, the CEOs of probably a hospital, a healthcare.
It's a dead end town. I'm sorry, the people are gonna get hurt. Why do you say that, Nate? Well, it is. Sorry. Look at the economic stats. They're brutal.
We gave Elon Musk $950 million.
Every time I say that, well, now it's going to change because now Trump is telling them, hey, Elon's a bad person that should be deported. But every time I say that, all the Republicans get on here and say, Elon's the best.
Take the personality out and take the politics out. And let's just imagine the government put $950 million into a factory and it could make widgets. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It's
bonkers.
If our kids aren't working there, or we're not working there, are we really? By the way, shouldn't that thing have a suite at the Buffalo Bills Stadium to support this new stadium? And shouldn't the workers be going to that game and those sorts of things?
I don't think your average person realizes how much money that is.
$950 million
for a venture that does nothing.
Well, again, why is it a trade secret to find out how many people work there?
Do you know what they're doing there? I know someone who works there. You know what he does all day?
I don't.
AI training for cars.
I think, and I could be corrected on this.
Go ahead.
I believe we've sort of decided the solar panel idea is not going to work, and I thought the governor decided it's going to be like more AI supercomputer stuff.
Yeah.
And then, so if you think about this, if you want to get into politics, Elon Musk, who was a supporter of Donald Trump, is getting more aid from Kathy Hochul, who inherited this $950 million thing from Andrew Cuomo. Because instead of saying...
Who just lost an election.
Did this work? We've got to keep trying to make it work.
We got to make it work no matter what. Even
Stamp. My other great, part of my life's work was this thing Stamp in Genesee County. Which
it's a complete joke. Go there. Let me just tell people what it is.
It's a 1,250 acre industrial park. And again, I started in Medina in Orleans County, and I used to have to drive down Route 77 all the time. You drive through what's known as the Alabama swamps. I used to think to myself, if anybody gets me, this is where they'll leave my body, because no one would ever find me. It's near
the Tonawanda Indian Reservation. Yeah,
correct. And
it's like swampland out there.
Iroquois Wildlife Refuge.
Right.
And the wildlife refuge is pristine. The Tonawanda Senecas have the big woods, which is 100-year-old woods that is sacred land to them. And the Genesee County IDA decided to buy up a bunch of land and build a giant industrial park, 1,250 acres, where there's no electricity, no water, there's roads, but they can't really accommodate what it is they want to do there, so that'll have to be... So they do all this... It's just this massive infrastructure project, and I started writing about it, and
people don't even know it exists, Mark.
They don't know it exists.
It's a huge... in the middle of nowhere, they built this... It's government money. They thought if we build this thing, Huawei or Oracle or whoever is going to be like, oh, yeah, we need to be there. When they haven't thought about, what real infrastructure you need to have this thing function. Do they have workers enough to be here? I mean, is the population big enough to even support a structure like that? I mean, like they haven't thought any of it out. They just built it.
Right. And keep in mind, I'm in Niagara Falls, a place where you would think there's all this unclaimed industrial land and vacant land and everything else. And in my mind, even Buffalo, you would think, well, if you're going to build or you're trying to attract tech companies or those sorts of things, you would do it where there's already water and electricity and sewer. But that's not what they did.
Well,
and I know they like to build these things, for like chips and everything in the middle of nowhere because there's all sorts of reasons why. But this idea, I mean, the thing failed.
It's a ghost town.
One of my great stories, I thought anyway, the state has a sprawl program where they examine projects to determine if it will contribute to sprawl. They determined that this one did, and they green-lighted it anyway because jobs. And by the way, again,
What jobs?
Where are these jobs? Who I asked a assistant to an official one time. Who's gonna? How isn't this like anti-environment to make people drive to Genesee County for a job?
Yes.
And the response was, "Well, we're all going to have electric cars by 2025." Well, it's 2025, and we don't have electric cars.
And the president is trying to phase them, saying we shouldn't have any.
And now we're going in a different direction. So
yeah, it's crazy. Listen, I think we have some of the worst leadership in the world in Western New York. I do. I mean, if you don't think that's the case, look across the border. You have growth everywhere, and you know, I know in Canada is a much smaller economy, has less advantages than we do. Why are we struggling so much? And like I always hear about the Buffalo comeback. Look at me, I got stuff all over the place here. I love Buffalo. I love the region.
Too. Sure.
But I'm going to tell you guys something that no one tells you. It was better in the 80s. And everyone gets mad when I say this, but I'm old enough to remember Elmwood Village being an actual organic village, not just some sort of yuppie boutique place. It had like neon light up and down. Remember that blue neon light? And then you had like the Adams Mark, which is now closed, was actually happening. I remember going seeing live music there. They built all that waterfront housing there in the 80s. There was a huge music scene in the late 70s and the 80s here. Spyra Gyra, of course, Rick James. All these kind of things were bubbling up here. Yes, the economy was starting to turn in Buffalo, but they put tons of money into Western New York. They built that light rail. They never finished it. There was things happening here. I don't know what's happening in the city of Buffalo right now. I don't. And everyone hates me when I say that. I think there are cool things like the Riverworks is kind of cool. Yeah, it's cool. They're the Richardson complex. Is that what the place is called? That's kind of neat to go look at. But I don't know if there's an economy at all there. And I don't see that much going on. Am I wrong? And tell me if I'm wrong.
The Buffalo News just did, I thought was an interesting story about the grittier 90s feel of Buffalo and how that was in some ways better. And
did they? I want to read this.
I thought it was interesting, and I think it's very true. And I think it's one of the problems I have with like these massive fix-alls. You know, I think one of the best things that happened to Buffalo is they did not have Bass Pro downtown.
Yeah.
And what happens instead is sort of a lot of little things that are, I think, better. And we can criticize Buffalo a lot, but at least the waterfront is a waterfront, and I think there's things that should be done and need to be done.
The waterfront is a win.
But you still
But the problem
have
it's
that.
going to you know what parks are without connected to communities though? They're no-go zones. They're danger zones. This is like urban planning 101. You don't build a park for the sake of having a park. The park needs to be connected to a broader city. It needs to be an organic thing, so the counter argument to what I'm saying, I've been saying a lot lately, like, listen, maybe revitalizing downtown isn't the plan. Because I remember we've been through so many phases. This is the thing that's going to save downtown. Maybe building on the strengths we already have. And there are certainly strengths in this region. But when I say that, people get mad at me. But I'm like, guys, if your leadership really believed in downtown, wouldn't they have put the Bill Stadium there? Wouldn't they have encouraged the UB to move there? Wouldn't they have done any of these things for the last 30 years? And they've been in office for some of them is almost that long. Go ahead.
I worked downtown on Main Street for a couple years, and I actually really look forward to that. As a person who grew up in Western New York and hung out down,
going to
I'm
downtown,
like a continental guy.
I
spent a lot of my worst nights.
What happened to that?
How you ever let that place go? I don't know, but
for those out there that don't know what that is, it was a great music venue.
It was just a really come as you are, like you say, organic.
Right.
Organic is something that we really don't put enough emphasis on about. And again, I hate this when there's a lot of talk about, if we build something, instead of like tearing down a main street, you fix what's there and make it attractive, I think, instead of like letting some developer come in and ruin it and then build some big box that can be anywhere. And these are the things that Buffalo...
Build on the beauty of our natural infrastructure.
But where are the local business people who... I'm not saying they're not out there, because they certainly are. But I think they're the people who would drive... and it's the same with Niagara Falls. By the way, one of my biggest issues... These two communities alone cannot succeed like on a national level. If we want to use the benchmark of the Buffalo Bills as like success on a national or even an international level, the one thing Western New York has is this attachment to this football team, which raises our stature.
Right.
However, all of us can agree, I think most of the players, if they're being honest, can agree, we're on the lower scale in terms of, like activity and growth and vibrancy.
No, we have to be honest about it. We can't. I'm going to go farther. Listen to the players. They don't want to be drafted here. Listen to who was that guy, Marshawn Lynch, like 5 or 10 years ago. He was like, listen, it was so depressing. Every time I left the parking lot in Orchard Park.
Willis McGahee, I think, probably was who it was.
Marshawn Lynch said every time he left, he got arrested, he got pulled over. Yeah, they're racially profiled.
The collective, like, Western New York attitude is, get
out of here, you loser. Yeah,
and
right.
I always think, like, what if we listened to Willis McGahee or whoever it was, 20 years ago, and really had a hard conversation?
I think he's the one who said nothing to do here except for go Applebee's.
Right. One of them did, whoever it was.
Yeah.
And he got annihilated. And I think what we really should be having is some thoughtful conversations. And again, Niagara Falls is cool in some ways, and Buffalo is cool in some ways, but together they could be.
That's right.
And even Canada.
And like for you, those who don't know, this should be a region. It should be the Southern Ontario Niagara region. Yes. And listen, I don't want to get into what I do nowadays because I don't want people to harass me, but I talk to people all the time. I'm doing some work, and I talk to people all the time about this region. And so many, I say to you guys been to Buffalo? Because despite what I say online, I love Buffalo. Mm-hmm. They have no interest. I hate to break this to you. People coming here from Saudi Arabia or from Romania or Norway, they don't care about Buffalo.
Yep.
I hate to break that to y'all. The idea in Western New York is get them to go to Buffalo and stay for Niagara Falls. Buffalo-Niagara partnership. It should be the Niagara partnership. That is the global selling point. We live in a global economy, whether you like it or not. Niagara is it. Nobody cares. Listen, I like Buffalo. I think it's cool, and it's got a quirky history. It's spooky. The city hall is magnificent looking. Maybe we can say, come to Niagara Falls. We'll try to get you to go to Buffalo, but not the other way around. Okay? It's just not going to work.
Well, I also think we should build the economy around us, which is the same thing with like Niagara Falls. Downtown Niagara Falls is a tourism place, and I do understand that, but people in like LaSalle and the outskirts, do they go to downtown Niagara Falls to hang out and have drinks and get
Not
food?
Even the people going to the falls stay in the falls.
So
they leave. They're like, we got to get out of here because this looks like hell. It looks like a nuclear bomb went off. There are places, you're gonna like Godowski's over by there.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
It's a fun place to go. It's a
cool.
classic place.
Yep.
But if you go to that neighborhood, it looks like like the day after or like the night of the living dead. Or every building is. I'm not exaggerating when I say every building is closed besides Godowski's.
It's true.
Every building.
It's an outlier that is built on a family history that's actually very cool. The Godowski family, and they're really nice people, and they really work hard.
And every time I go in there, they're super nice to me.
The pierogies are still like $1 somehow. I don't understand how that's possible, but
yeah,
their
and they're
food is
super
good.
nice.
It's very it's organic. It's authentic, and anytime you send somebody there, they're always like, "Oh, that was a cool place." And we have a lot of those places around, but they are not sort of the driver.
So I complained about all the projects in Buffalo that failed. We can talk about the projects in Niagara Falls that failed. I remember, guys, I'm old enough to remember when they built the Rainbow Mall, and it was absolutely stunning. And when they built the Winter Garden, and it was the coolest thing in the entire world. And they had the Festival of Lights. And I remember going to concerts at the convention center. And people that I talk to that are a little older than me would say, well, listen, Fall Street, before they tore it all down, was amazing. So I'm not advocating necessarily for some Deus Ex Machina that's going to save us from ourselves. I just think that we need leadership that creates some sort of organic growth and builds on our strengths. And to get to that point, the Deus Ex Machina they're trying to do right now is this stadium, right?
It's an arena, 6,000 seat arena, with that would ostensibly be used for minor league hockey and youth sports.
So nobody knows about it, right? Very few people realize that this is actually being considered. They're trying to build an arena behind the casino in Niagara Falls. And by the way, I will say this to the Seneca Casino. You look great nowadays. Those lights look fantastic. Don't you think? I think it looks awesome. What do you think?
Yeah, I be honest with you, I didn't really notice that, but
no, they put these LED lights on. It looks, anyway, behind there's a plot of land, and they want to put a stadium there of some sort. Even though we already have a minor league hockey stadium in Buffalo, are they going to compete now? Is that what they're like? One of the cool things they actually did in Buffalo that seems to be effective and working is what is it? Harbor? What do they call it again?
Harbor Center.
Harbor Center is packed with tournaments. People come to those tournaments. Now that we're going to do another one in Buffalo,
I think
in Niagara Falls, rather.
I think that is the idea, that there's so much demand for ice time that Niagara Falls could work and benefit from that.
And then you're gonna have, like you said, now you're gonna have Niagara Falls and Buffalo competing with each other instead of building on each other's strengths.
What I find so amazing is that, to me, it's being developed in a vacuum. Again, no one consults with Buffalo to ask. Essentially, we would be building, another sheet of ice or whatever, and how does that? It's also supposed to be a concert venue, so I would ask, how does it impact like Art Park? And I guess the answer is they don't really care that it impacts Art Park, right?
There's no regional approach.
So
the size of Houston versus Buffalo, I'm just going to look it up. So Houston's is a big city, right? I know Buffalo's not. It's not necessarily fair. But Houston's Texas land area is 640 square miles. Mm-hmm. The land area of Buffalo, New York is 52.5 miles. Nothing. Mm-hmm. My point is, they have a regional approach in a lot of cities. They say the city is not just this spot. It is a big, vast area that has to be coordinated in some respect and has to have a regional identity. Here, if you're in South Buffalo, they think Niagara Falls is on Mars.
They do. A lot of Niagara Falls people think Buffalo is on Mars.
Absolutely. If you're in Cambria or something, they're like, I never go to Buffalo in my life.
My wife always says, you're going to go all the way to Buffalo? I'm like, all the way to Buffalo?
It's 15 minutes.
It's
15 minutes. Any other place in America, it'd be like it's the same town. But
she got a job. Her job relocated to Buffalo, so it's different now. She has a different attitude. But for the longest time, she would say, you're going to drive all the way to Buffalo? And I would think, all the way to Buffalo? And this whole idea that, like, our students, our tourists, the people who spend money, right? I like to think about people who spend money, families.
Yeah.
Families, dads and kids. I have my grandkids, young grandkids with me all the time, and we do things. There's very little to do with them in downtown Niagara Falls. Go to the Children's Museum. You have
to do things with them that are. Listen, my vision for the whole region would be to turn that into a national park, like Yosemite, where you have hiking and you have camping and you have outdoors, and you just talk about it. They're doing eminent domain for this stadium, another like flashy attraction. If you really wanted to bring people here to have a world-class experience, you would somehow restore it to the state that it once was in.
Yeah. So
people could walk the gorge and feel like I am in primordial America and I am looking at this magnificent thing, which it is, I tell people Niagara Falls is amazing. It's 80% of North America's fresh water eventually flows over the falls.
Right.
20% of the world's.
I tell people all the time, the gorge in the fall, it's the Grand Canyon with
trees.
Oh
my gosh. It is so amazing. Listen, it is stunning. The Lewiston Peninsula. And if you put on top of that the proximity to Canada, I mean, to me, the building blocks are all there to create an incredible regional experience. If you build on what are our strengths? Tourism, even though we don't recognize it. We have the biggest tourist destination in the world, guys. The biggest. Number 2, agriculture. We have great land here. It's if you know about the geography, the Canadian Shield and all the topsoil from Canada was pushed down by glaciers, you can grow anything in Western New York. You can grow Concord grapes here at an industrial scale. I don't think you can do that. And I think there's one other place in the world you can do that. We have an incredible environment here. Those are our strengths. And we have an international border close to one of the fastest growing cities in the world, Toronto. That seems to be the game plan, guys. Not, let's get another brewery in downtown Buffalo to save it. Or let's get another tech giant to build a stamp plant that we can use.
If you believe Delaware North's numbers, I think it's Delaware North because they ran the visitor center. It's not exactly their number because they don't really know how to count it. But 9 million people come every year to the state park. And then up the road, you have the power project. So you have these two engines of an economy that no one else has. And,
it's amazing.
We somehow, I mean, the state of New York is doing gangbusters with those two things.
Oh, they're making massive money.
I mean, the amount of money pouring out of Niagara Falls State Park into Albany would probably make us sick. But again, back to reporting, we're doing a terrible job of examining that and really pointing it out. And I haven't done the research. You have to do the research. But if you look at it and you say, you know, where's all this money going and what are we doing with it? It starts to drive the conversation to, is this what we need to be doing? But those are your engines that no one else has. And the thing about Niagara Falls that's so frustrating to me is, if you travel places in, like Nashville is an example, it's a party town.
Yeah.
You know, it's fun.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I want it to be Clifton Hill.
Right.
But I think the interior of the city, you know, the Main Street and those sorts of things, these are the places where we should have artists and cool people and creative people, and the vibe is just not there. I just left a young woman who's opening a restaurant, and she seems very energetic. I wish her well. She's the kind of person I think we want to see in Niagara Falls and Western New York. And, you know, she's kind of following a dream. And I think those are the kind of people you have to cultivate to build something cool, you know, because Western New York has the potential for being way cool.
I just looked it up. Well, yeah, absolutely. The good thing about Buffalo is it has world-class infrastructure. And I mean, not infrastructure, architecture. Gorgeous.
Right.
It's iconic. Going across the Peace Bridge and looking out at Lake Erie is gorgeous. It is gorgeous. It has American history is written all over this place. It's a huge part of American history. And every place says that, but the stories that can be told about Niagara Falls, from the Underground Railroad to the abolition movement, or to the suffrage movement, all these things happened here. You know, to Nikola Tesla with alternating current. I could go on all day.
Yes.
It's an amazing place. But I looked up the numbers. Niagara Falls, 14 million visitors between Canada and the United States. Okay. Mm-hmm. Eiffel Tower, 6 million. Mm-hmm. Great Wall of China, 10 million. The pyramids, between 7 and 12 million. Mm-hmm. So we're talking mythic status as a global destination. And I'm not saying that, well, no, I'm saying that has to be capitalized on. People will come here. The story has been told for 300 years, literally. Should we exploit the falls as a gaudy attraction? Or should we make the falls a part of a broader story about environment, about sustainability, about beauty, about ecotourism? I think it's the latter answer.
I agree with that. I think when you see the gorge, and, you know, this is another question for, like, the people who run stuff. How can you have these other communities where they embrace the environmental people, the people who like to hike, the people who like to bike? I just told this story to Mike Caleri, our movie reviewer, yesterday. Windsor, Ontario, and Detroit, Michigan are building a Gordie Howe Bridge. It's our it's our Peace Bridge that we never built.
God knows why.
But
listen.
When they're done, they already have it prepared for the cycling community. So
wow.
Worldwide cyclists are coming to drive over to cycle over the bridge. Now somebody will say, well, what's the big deal? The big deal is because people from outside the community will have a reason to come. They'll run across the bridge. They'll hang out for a while. They might come back. You know, Detroit just had the NFL draft.
Listen,
did
people in Buffalo don't want to hear this. Detroit is absolutely rocking compared to the city of Buffalo. It isn't even close.
Well, we're going to have the draft, I think.
When are we having it?
Well,
forget the draft. There's 3 stadiums downtown in the city of Detroit. There's 3 stadiums. Like, listen, the other thing is, like, what if you look at the infrastructure in Buffalo, the last cool thing they built there was Pilot Field. Again,
right.
35 years ago at this point?
Right. I actually had this conversation with a younger person who didn't realize that Buffalo was at one point in line to get a professional baseball.
Oh, I did a podcast with Mike. What's his name? Bologna. Yeah. You know, it's an interesting, quirky guy. Interesting guy though, and he used to be the head of the promotions for the Bisons. Yep. He says they got the team.
Yep.
We got a Major League Baseball team, and they decided at the last minute. Listen, I don't think we can sustain this. Mm-hmm. You know, they couldn't believe they won. Listen, I'm not against Buffalo. I think for Buffalo to survive as a city, you need to make it a regional thing. And there's this thing about it's called what Freud called the narcissism of the small. It's like small differences become huge to people. Like people in North Tonawanda where I grew up, they're like, I hate Tonawanda. It's like the same city, okay? It's like the same place.
Right.
And like in Buffalo, people in Lancaster are like, we want nothing to do with Niagara Falls. Or whatever. We're the same. We are all in this together. And the part of it is the way the local governments are designed. There's no sharing of resources, and everyone has these little fiefdoms they want to protect. But we need to figure out a way to coordinate the development of this region. I think about the Buffalo airport versus the Niagara Falls airport and the lack of capacity. There's so many missed opportunities. I think about the train station. I think about the fact that
it's unbelievable. We built a $40 million train station
to nowhere,
and Buffalo built a new depot down by the baseball,
like a $35 million depot.
Yeah, a lesser thing, but still the same. And it's not a commuter rail. It's not something where we get on it. We've talked about this before. You don't go to Buffalo and take it to the falls on a day trip and just kind of take it back or something. Nobody does that. Because it's complicated, but the track system isn't right. The scheduling's off.
And God knows why they built a new train station in Buffalo under an underpass that no one can go to, that's always empty, when we're giving millions of dollars to the central terminal just down the street, basically.
My thing is, we built these things. I hear so many people in Niagara Falls say, oh, that train station's empty, blah, blah. I said, look, it's there. The question now is, what do we do?
It's an awesome facility.
Canada,
it should be going right to. Did you hear that? By the way, there's a contract was just signed with Canada to do hydroplane trips from Niagara to Toronto.
Right.
It's a 30-year contract.
Right.
30 minutes.
Right.
Can you imagine if you took a train station from Niagara Falls up to the hydroplane up to Toronto? I mean, or whatever. Listen, we should be working with Canada right now to create connections to Toronto. It should be a huge commuter route.
We actually, again, missed a large window because we were under the Biden administration and tensions weren't as high. But we also had a massive infrastructure bill that we didn't get any money to fix our train tracks.
So all this stuff gets me mad because I tried to run for county executive, got my head absolutely chopped off. And I said all this stuff. I said we should talk about Niagara Falls more. We should make it regional. And people were like, "Shut up." Then I tried to run for Congress. I literally got taken to court for fraud for trying to get on the ballot. These people will cut your head off. And maybe in the future we can talk more about, why that is, or, the state of local politics. But it is not, it is not for the faint of heart. Mm-hmm. Like, listen, I am a well-intentioned person. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I may not always be right. But these conversations you and I are having very fluently right now, they cannot be had publicly.
We're not having, I don't really see evidence of, it's just like Niagara Falls and Buffalo. Do they talk to each other? Is there any kind of communication?
No.
Does anybody know that Niagara Falls is building a $200 million?
No, except for Crystal Peoples-Stokes, who's the state senator who wrote a letter on behalf of it.
Yeah, they know. But again, we're back to.
But why did she write that letter? Can I say this, or am I going to be? You're going to be mad at me. We'll talk about it. Basically, let me just say to the people out there, why is she writing these letters to support this project?
I think a lot of this is back to Stamp or Elon Musk's place. Mm-hmm. Construction, big contracts, public money. Mm-hmm. Is it wise investment is the question we need to ask, and people need to ask that. And all politicians all across America love to build stadiums and cut a ribbon. Because, and I have this great guy. If you really want to ever really get into this thing, the guy's name is Neil DeMoss. He's a journalist. He runs something called Field of Schemes. It's
I've heard about this.
It's a website devoted to arena development, stadium development. He does a lot with.
Didn't
NFL
he say the
stuff.
worst one ever is the Buffalo Bills Stadium?
Well, it's changed now because now Washington and Chicago are talking about these gargantuan $4 billion places. But his point is always, he actually thought when he started out in like the 80s, I think it's the 90s maybe he started, but the 80s was like a boom of arenas and stuff. But since then, we have a lot of research and we have a lot of proof. Like back then, you didn't really know. If somebody said, let's build an arena, it sounded great.
Cool,
so
sounds great.
One. But now usually when you build them, they cost you money. They cost you upfront money. They cost you management money. They're not like really good returns on investment. And we know all this. And he said to me, I was talking to him a couple weeks ago, and he said, the frustrating thing is that we have all the evidence and people keep doing it. And a lot of it is just politics, because politicians like to spend this big money and make something.
I did this.
You know,
I saved you.
Right.
But listen, at the same time, I was a local leader, and I did things. I built the West River Trail. I built the Welcome Center, and everything. I did the Scenic Woods Trail. Every time I did one of these things, there was so much unbelievable red tape and opposition. Mm-hmm. Even to things that were just like no-brainers. Like the West River Trail on Grand Island is an absolute no-brainer. There's 2 roads there. Let's close one of the roads and make a trail. Why do we need 2 of them?
Right.
But there was like literally hundreds of people protesting it. So I understand that when you're trying to do something as a local leader, there's going to be opposition. But when we're not talking about building a trail here. We're talking about a $200 to $300 million investment for that thing up in Niagara Falls. There's no feasibility study or anything, as far as I know.
Well, they did the feasibility study. They did release that.
And what did it say?
Basically, it belongs where it belongs, and it could work if we do everything right. But, the bigger thing with it is, for me, well, first of all, what would you do with $200 million otherwise? I mean, I could think of a lot.
Revitalize the third,
how many
street.
How many DPW workers can we hire to cut the grass?
Fix the road so the tourists can come through and actually drive on a smooth road to the falls.
And
tear down listen, when you go to Niagara Falls State Park, they tell you the story. It's like, this used to be covered by factories, and we saved it by the Free Niagara movement. Every time I go there and I hear that, and I leave the park and I go down Buffalo Avenue, I'm like, all I see is ugly factories.
Well, here's something.
Shouldn't it be trying to tear those down?
Here's something I've been kind of looking at. I haven't done a lot of the research, but
go ahead.
I believe Oxy is officially closed.
It is. Yeah, I've heard the same thing. Go ahead.
And so that's a huge stretch of Buffalo Avenue along the river, the upper river. I don't know how reclaimable it is, because who knows what went on in there. But
it's reclaimable.
If
there's a will, there's a way.
Why are we not? That's a conversation, right? Like any local leader, Western New York, it doesn't matter, Buffalo, wherever. The conversation is, this giant industrial thing is going away. What's next? And what does it take to get it to the next level? Where do we go with it? I'm not sure who's doing that. Maybe they are doing it. It's possible.
Well, no, when I was running for Congress the first time, I said, hey, we need to tear those buildings down. And I got calls from unions saying, you need to shut up and keep in your place, know your lane, because people work there.
Yeah.
And I was like, how many? 12 people? Yeah. Like, we're going to have one of the greatest wonders of the world marred by absolute disgusting plants that are completely antiquated, that are still polluting.
Well, we have Goodyear. I mean, Goodyear is I've written dozens of stories about this, but Goodyear is and has been emitting or allowing a known carcinogen to go into the air for months and months and months and years. And the DEC acknowledges this is happening, and now they're putting in some changes. They're starting to get a handle on it and whatever, but it always gets back to, how many people work there? I mean, again, I'm not trying to say people should lose their jobs, but when I first heard about this whole thing, I thought it must be hundreds of people that work there. And I find it's like 45.
Yeah.
And you say, we're going to go through all of this.
Do you remember the what's it called? Tonawanda Coke?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I was threatened by Tonawanda Coke, alleged or people claiming to be representatives, like physically threatened.
Right.
Because
you were talking about the air quality.
I fought it, and it got torn down. And
Right.
people said it will never go, and they said there's people working there. I think there was 12 people working there.
Right.
And the thing that hurt me the most, and I'm sorry, it's not about credit. It's about, I think when you don't claim credit for things you actually did, the people who fought you get to do dumb things in the future. Mm-hmm. So when they tore it down, I was shocked to see the people that were invited were the very same politicians who were telling me that it needs to stay there forever.
Yeah.
And it literally, I did not sleep that night. That we did everything in our power to shut that thing down, and it's gone. So I think the one in Niagara Falls can go too. Do you know who is the president of Occidental Chemical?
I don't.
It was Arnie Hammer's grandfather. Arnie Hammer, the alleged cannibalist actor. Mm-hmm. His grandfather. Can you believe that? Mm-hmm. It's wild, right? Yeah. And so Occidental Chemical acquired Hooker Chemical that created Love Canal.
Canal. I mean, it's still sitting there, right? I mean, it's
not. Yeah.
It's like we get stuck in a time warp or a stagnancy. And I think other communities, I can't say this for sure, but I read an article. I'm fascinated with Nashville because my buddy who took me on a truck trip across America in 2007. Great guy. His sister lives there, and now he lives there. And I read an article about a guy who was at the forefront of sort of changing the image of Nashville. And he said at the time they were honky-tonk. You know, Nashville was very much honky-tonk, and he wanted to bring it into a new generation, and of course they have. They've flipped it into like a hub of country music, like modern country music.
It's happening.
And it's, you know, they get the NFL draft and 400,000 people are out on the street. Now, again, they have the same problems we have. They have homelessness and they have all these sorts of things. It doesn't make it go away. But they don't have Niagara Falls. And when I think about that,
they got nothing. They had a little creek.
They have this massive music scene with all these influential people. And again, it grew sort of organically, but they cultivated it too. And
I say this all the time, Mark. When I left the area as a kid, I realized, wow, that place I grew up in really has a chip on its shoulder. Like I used to say to people, they should put a sign on the outside of the city of Buffalo that says, you know, you think you don't suck? I mean, welcome to Buffalo. You think you're better than me? I mean, that's almost like the attitude here. Because when I went to California, it was always like, I couldn't believe it. Everyone was like, you can do anything. You can be the next Steve Jobs. You want to be an astronaut? I'm 70 years old. You could still be an astronaut. It was like everything was like, people were so positive. Yeah. And the attitude here is, I remember as a kid, I was like, I want to be a writer. And I remember my teacher saying, you think you're good enough to be a writer? I mean, that was literally like the attitude here. So when we have victories, the things that are celebrated that are excellent, or things that happen that are amazing, like why isn't there more of a reverence for Lois Gibbs?
Right.
Lois Gibbs is a housewife who fought. She was the original Erin Brockovich, right? She fought this. She literally took federal agents hostage to fight for her family because they were suffering from the Love Canal disaster. Nobody even in Western New York even remembers who she is.
Well, something we don't ever talk about with Love Canal. It has a cap, or it's underneath is a system that was put in place in the 1970s.
Yeah.
And everyone who monitors it will tell you it's fine.
Right.
But I think we're all adults enough to we can have this conversation about is that technology safe at this point, or we would obviously build a better thing today because we have new materials and whatever. But the idea that like a lot of that part of Niagara Falls is still sort of the same way because that thing is still there. When you drive down those side streets next to the actual,
it's shocking
landfill. I mean, it's
stunning. It's
like
disturbing.
A trip back in time. You're back to 1982 or something.
Or when you drive by Bell Aerospace and realize this is where they made some of the fastest aircraft ever, and also the atomic bomb.
Yeah, we just tore it down. By the way, they tore down a giant building over there. They tore down a couple of them. They tore down Bell's office. I mean,
the hangar still sits there, but yeah, it looks. But
again, I know it was dumpy when they tore it down. I know the current company.
Right.
The place was a shambles, and it would take all this money. But we have right next door, by the way, in the old airport is the Niagara Aerospace Museum.
Right.
Which has a lot of the artifacts from this thing.
Super cool.
What?
I mean, not super cool. It's actually completely antiquated and weird, but super cool they're trying.
What if you would have taken Bell's office and renovated it and put the artifacts in there and made it like a cool thing?
And I've talked about with you the Adams Power Plant.
Adams Power Plant is sitting there right now.
It's sitting there full of old cars.
Yep.
The Adams Power Plant, for those who don't know, is where Westinghouse first used alternating current to power Buffalo and make Buffalo the city of light. It is literally the start of the modern age, and it is behind a barbed wire fence in Niagara Falls. Completely, there's no plaque, there's no commemorative sign, nothing. It is a privately owned car shed with a hole in the roof, a apparent hole in the roof. Like, we could talk all day about the problems. And listen, I don't even want to bash the mayor. I mean, I don't know enough about your plan, is all I'm saying. Mayor of Niagara Falls, if you're building a giant stadium, what's the plan? I mean, I read the paper. I don't understand it. It's part rope. What is it? A part like rope?
Like an adventure
obstacle course
kind of thing,
part ice hockey stadium, part performance venue. What? It's like everything.
To me, it feels like a lot of sort of feel-good ideas, Let's have an ice rink.
I want to say to you, listen, if you're listening to this, and I mean, maybe you will be, ask yourself, what do you know about stadium construction? Have you talked to any professionals? Have you benchmarked other cities? Have you received like analysis from experts on stadium construction and what makes them effective? You know, I did this for a living for a long time, and I'm not offering to help you or even suggesting I should. I'm not up on the stuff. But I can tell you, even when you program the food in a food court in a stadium, the science that would go into determining whether or not it would be successful, the analysis that would go into it. And in the private sector, you wouldn't spend $1 on a Dunkin' Donuts or a Tim Hortons unless you knew you'd have a return on investment. Have you done that type of thinking on this thing? Have you really thought about who is your target audience for this? Where is the investment going to go? How is it going to be structured? How is traffic going to be brought to it? Have you done this? Because if this was your own money, would you be investing it in this structure? I don't know. Ask yourself this before you do it.
This is exactly what, I'm in the process of asking. Because, again, when I was at Investigative Post, part of my job was asking questions about, do we need a new Bill Stadium? Do we need to spend this much money? What do other cities do? And then over the course of that, you meet and you talk to consultants and people who do these sorts of things. And then you have one of them say to you, are you aware they're trying to build an arena in Niagara Falls? And you tell them you live in Niagara Falls.
And they're like, what's the population? Like, just when
one example is Darien Lake. Like, when you talk about concerts, Darien Lake actually does a pretty good job.
They bring a lot of acts in, that's for sure.
And it's the summertime sort of, and the acts are sort of in that mode in Western New York. When they come to Western New York, they go to Darien Lake. Well, now you're going to compete with that. Are you going to compete with that?
You're going to cannibalize the business.
Are you going to
compete? Are you going to compete with the casino? Are you going to here? Are stadium acts even a thing anymore? I'll say this to you: one of the best concert venues in the world potentially could be the one at Art Park, if they put infrastructure into it to make it like Red Rock or something like that, a real outdoor venue where you're looking at the gorge. They could enhance it a lot. Would the money be better spent doing that and making that into a real permanent and beautiful structure? I mean, it's already kind of cool, but it could be world class.
I think they struggle too. You don't really know this, but it's expensive to hire good acts, and there's a lot of complaints from people about the quality, and is it diminished? And if they can't do it, would the city of Niagara Falls? I mean, frankly, the city of Niagara Falls struggles to cut the grass. So are they going to be able to be in the concert
Are they going to be able to maintain
business?
this and promoting and getting people to come? No, they're not. I mean, that's my assumption. What's the plan? I could tell you when I was in the private sector doing this type of stuff for a living, the type of scrutiny my proposals would go under.
Absolutely.
I would talk about Shark Tank. I would get grilled not only by the people I was working for, but by the potential venues. Mm-hmm. Like to the point of and if the mayor or the leadership is not willing to take those questions and go through the Shark Tank of public opinion. And now on the West River Trail or the Welcome Center, go back. You can watch the videos on the Town of Grand Island website. I got grilled every week. Every week I got grilled. You got to have that public debate if you're going to do something like this. Mm-hmm. I believe in Niagara. Let's be positive towards the end of this. Can I just be positive? Mm-hmm. I love Niagara Falls. I think I want my ashes spread at Niagara Falls and at Fort Niagara. Those are my two favorite places on planet Earth. Maybe a third would be Victoria Park over in Niagara on the Lake. I love it there too. I love these places. This is where my soul is. I feel a connection to this. Behind me, I have Dickens. It says on this thing, "It seemed to be lifted from the earth and to looking into heaven." Dickens on Niagara. He was permanently scarred. He hated coming to America. He thought it was crass and commercial. The thing he was most amazed by was the beauty of Niagara Falls. He didn't want to leave. He said he remembered to the day he died. This is an incredible place. And the city of Buffalo has an incredible history too, with the War of 1812 and the architecture and the Underground Railroad and the black musicians that were here. All that stuff, it's cool. But if we don't figure out a regional plan to celebrate this stuff, if we start keep doing these piecemeals, like silver bullet ideas, we're never going to get there. And that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Is we need better leadership, we need fresh leadership, and we need endless and positive feelings from our leaders to say, hey, I'm going to talk to you and we're going to get this done together. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Mark.
Yeah, we also need an active media. I mean,
oh my God.
We need to be,
yes.
I don't like to be the jerk in the room, but sometimes you need to be. And I think it needs to be, this discussion needs to be driven by hard questions about, are we doing the right things? And again, who's deciding this stuff?
I think what you said about media, I mean, I think the great tragedy is that the media is either servant to corporate interests locally, which a lot of them are, or that the media is completely dead. I mean, I remember there being a Grand Island paper, a Tonawanda News. I mean, the Tonawanda News used to be a legitimate newspaper.
Right.
When I was a kid.
Like so many things in Western New York, we're behind the times. Other places have, embraced the new technology and all this sorts of stuff, and we're still doing a lot of stuff that we did in 1996. And, it's hard. Change comes hard around here, Change, even
people
having
hate
a conversation
change.
about it.
It's an older population. It's an older population. They're set in their ways, and a lot of them get angry when you say this is done the wrong way. Mm-hmm. They get really mad.
But again, you're back to sort of the fiefdoms. The people who really get most mad are the people who they're doing okay in their space in the government. Right. There are people in Niagara Falls making six figures. There are multiple public employees making six figures. There are people in state parks making six figures. And there are a lot of people who have private sector jobs that don't make a fraction of that, or have multiple jobs to try to make anywhere close to that.
Right.
And to me, that's just kind of upside down. And I don't know how this is the bottom line. It's like Tonawanda Coke. Tonawanda Coke doesn't get fixed until people get off their asses and fix it. And you're not going to wait around for some politician to fix it. That's not going to happen.
To be positive to you guys out there, I think what we really need to do, and this is what I was talking about when I was going to run for office, is we need to be investing in small businesses. That the things we actually need. We need haircuts. We need contractors. We need people to cut the grass. We need people to fix the streets. These are the things we should be working on in our communities to make things better. Start from scratch. Start from that organic level. We need to be investing in local art. I'm a big believer in culture. Like culture is valuable. It matters. And without a culture of positivity and hope, your communities die. And I think I see a lot of that in Western New York. I see hopelessness. I mean, not from the rah-rah of the newspapers or the people that are in power, from people that living day to day trying to make a living here. They can't do it. And so I think we need to figure out ways to give these people hope. And I think by doing that is by investing in small businesses, investing in organic growth. Stop looking for that silver bullet. Do you think I'm crazy?
Well, you just referenced Dickens, who considered the falls to be like a source of inspiration.
Right.
And, artists and people of that nature, environmental people, are we trying to reach out? Right. Again, back to the gorge. We spent $40 million, I think it was, to remove the Robert Moses Parkway to make the gorge more environmentally friendly and more pedestrian friendly. And I actually think that's a great idea.
It's beautiful.
It's not a problem.
Yeah.
The issue is, what did we do with it once we finished it? We didn't tell the world, come here and see it.
We didn't make it a cycling route. We didn't connect. Can you imagine if we made like a regional race?
What about just like a fall thing where we just say, come to the gorge and walk around? I mean, it sounds...
Is this partially because the state parks in the city of Niagara Falls don't coordinate?
I think a lot of it has to do with state parks is very concerned about losing revenue. So, but I don't know.
So this is before we go any further, this is the mantra of Western New York. They're always like, hey,
what am I going to lose?
No, also everything's a zero-sum game, but also the people of Niagara Falls, if you ask them, they're like, listen, the state has been ripping us off for generations. Some truth to that, right?
Yes, no question.
Because the state takes all the capital from the state parks.
No question.
And the state takes all the money from the water authority.
The state built a $46 million visitor center and replaced their old visitor center, which, to be honest, it
wasn't bad.
They said it was so terrible, but
the question I have is, what are the numbers there? How many people go in there?
Well, again, 9 million is the number that they've used. But by the way, if you add in the Grand Island Visitor Center and the Niagara Falls State Park Visitor Center and the Destination Niagara Visitor Center, which is downtown,
how much are we talking?
We have 3 visitor centers within 5 miles of each other?
Well, listen, the best one is the one in Grand Island. I'm going to tell you why. There's an active store there. I want you to go there today. Go there today. You're going to be shocked by how many people are actually in it.
I wouldn't be shocked by that. What I find so interesting is that, State Parks builds a $46 million sort of nondescript, nice building that nobody,
It's
and across the
gorgeous.
street is the Turtle, which was designed by
The turtle is awesome. We could talk about the turtle. The turtle is one of the coolest things in the world. It should be given back to the native people, but or figured out to be some tribute to the local culture, the indigenous culture here. I don't know what to do on that, but it shouldn't be torn down or put into a parking lot or something.
I like to think that, it is a turtle, which symbolically has, wisdom and strength and perseverance and all these great things.
It's a symbol of God, essentially, right? Yeah.
And it was created in the indigenous story of creation, which is the earth was created on the back of a turtle. It's so many cool things to talk about and but it's Western New York, so it's sat empty since 1985, and everybody
That's
says,
how long it's been?
Well, no, it was 90 whatever, I guess. But the point being, how many people do you run into in Western New York who'll say, tear it down?
Tons. I've had people tell me to tear down City Hall.
Tear it down. These are the things when people visit or travel, these are the things you go see.
Do you know what people say? Well, listen, if the turtle was a local, in a class, high-quality Smithsonian level museum, people would go to it. People would go to it.
I think if they could use the front lawn to sell bubble tea and have kids playing out there. No, you're laughing.
You're right. They would do it.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
I was watching the Today Show Sunday morning several weeks ago, and it was about Holland, Michigan. Mm-hmm. I actually wrote a column about this that we haven't printed. I don't know what happened to it, but Holland, Michigan, just like it sounds, has Dutch ancestry, and they bought like a windmill, and they planted tulips.
Right.
Okay? There's tulips all over the place. Every year in May, they have a tulip festival. How many people do you think come for 10 days?
I have no clue.
600,000.
Holy cow, are you kidding me?
They showed the footage. The mayor's dressed like a Dutch guy. He
It's
comes
fun.
out on the
It's
street.
fun. Yeah.
They do an official street cleaning.
Wow.
Where everybody comes and they quote unquote clean the street. It's just a ceremony.
Right.
It looked like a blast. And I thought, they don't have Niagara Falls.
Well, we got to do stuff like that.
Yes.
But I will say this of the state parks, in defense of the state parks. I understand the problem between the city and the state. The state park looks amazing right now. It does. It looks better than it's ever had in my life.
I think
Terrapin Point is amazing.
It absolutely is. I think the conversation with them, this doesn't have to be adversarial.
Yeah.
What it should be is more, listen, you guys have a lot. This is great. The park is great. We don't really have to. They plunged a ton of money into the park because the New York Times called it shabby.
Is that what happened?
Yes.
It was kind of shabby. Now it looks fantastic.
So they put a ton of money into it.
Yeah.
And again, they built a visitor center. They did all these things.
Mm-hmm.
They are a partner. Just like Buffalo and all these places, these are our partners.
But didn't the Seneca Casino give $1 billion over the last however years to the city of Niagara Falls?
I don't know if it's been $1 billion, but
it's close.
They've given them a lot of
so
money.
When I hear something like that, I'm like, this is just local mismanagement on an epic scale, and maybe we shouldn't trust local leadership to do anything. That's kind of what I feel. I'm like, $1 billion. Do you know how much $1 billion is?
Well, it is interesting when you think about what did the city do with that?
What did they do with it?
Yeah, it's a very legitimate question, and but again, I was just having this conversation with somebody earlier today. At what point in the year do we all get together and have a conversation about this stuff? No
one can talk about it. No one's in charge. No one's accountable.
Everybody just kind of does their own thing.
Listen, like I said, I'll put this out on the internet, and there'll be more people saying you should, acting like I'm the mayor of the region or something. I'm not. I'm a citizen. These are my ideas as a citizen.
One of my favorite movies of all time is The Pope of Greenwich Village, which is a stupid movie with Mickey Rourke and the other guy, Eric Roberts.
Uh-huh.
One of my favorite parts is are you familiar with this movie?
No, I want to watch it though.
I'm really losing everybody, but
no, I want to watch it.
It's goofy, right? It's like goofy 80s movie. But essentially there's a Pope of Greenwich Village who runs everything, and at a very, I don't want to ruin it, but at a very important point in the movie.
You can do spoiler alerts. It's like 30
Spoiler
years old.
alert.
Go ahead.
Mickey Rourke bangs on the table and he looks at the guy and he says, "I'm the Pope of Greenwich Village."
Oh, okay.
And I always tell people, we really are the driver, right?
Yeah.
None of this gets done if regular people don't get involved in it. Tonawanda Coke stays forever if we wait for the senator or for the congressman or something.
If we don't fly private drones over it and show what it's doing.
Actually, the rain catchers in that case. Remember the ladies with the buckets?
I was working with them.
They put the buckets out.
And then we did a bucket underneath the Grand Island Bridge, and I showed the state this is more dangerous than anywhere in the state.
Yes, they caught the rain, and then they showed everybody, hey, these tests. By the way, they had an entire state agency that was monitoring the place, but they couldn't catch the rain.
Do you know what people were telling me when we were doing that? That lady is crazy. I'm not going to say her name because I didn't ask her to use her. She's crazy.
Always happens.
Always. Listen, people are making change. It sounds cliche, but they're always called crazy and nuts and weird, including you, Mark, including me.
One of my gifts, I think, for lack of a better word, has been my ability to answer the phone and listen to the people who I've been told are crazy. And
that's why I love your stories.
I'm sitting with Nate McMurray, who some people think are, but
listen, it feels so empty.
I don't mean to say you're crazy, but again, I find so often when I talk to people who are labeled, India Walton's a good example. I interviewed India Walton several times, and she came across to me as sort of a very genuine person.
Like a nice mom. That's what she comes across like to me when I meet her. I'm like, why do people think she's crazy?
I felt like she wanted to cut the grass.
She's not part of the, when you really, can I say something though? When you meet these establishment figures, the people you guys see on TV, they're freaks. I'm just going to be honest with you. They are freaks. They're the weirdest people you've ever met in your life. They rely on your allegiance to their authority. And to make, if you feel like it's all hopeless here in Western New York, remember, I read a study recently, in these authoritarian governments, 3% of the people resisting stops authoritarian governments from taking hold. You don't need huge movements. You need 3% of us saying, hey, is the stadium a good idea? Hey, maybe the Bills Stadium shouldn't be in Orchard Park across the street from the one that already existed. 3%. 3%. Maybe we shouldn't build a new train station when the central terminal is right there and we can restore it. And I tell people this to be hopeful.
I'm a big proponent, for what I do. When you see that big project coming down the line, the best thing you can do as a reporter is try to find out everything you can and tell people. And, a lot of times it's still going to happen, okay? Because you can tell people everything and they're not paying attention. And then they'll come back and they'll say, why did we do this?
Yeah.
I like to be, because I've learned over the course of many years in Western New York, when you see that big project that's coming, a lot of it has to do with building stuff and putting people to work and all that stuff, which is great, it's fine. But it doesn't make sense in the grander scheme of thing. And will it work long term? These are things we need to ask. And I'm always, it's like back to OTB. Not a lot of things at OTB I think were suspect were never really clarified or fixed. But over the course of the long haul, change happened. Now, the key for the media is to stay on the change. Somebody needs to watch Byron Brown and everybody else and make sure it's going the right way. Because again, this is a resource. This is a place where there's money.
Right.
This is a place where it should be benefiting the community.
If we're operating it, the money should be going to the community.
Should be going to the community,
not to other people's pockets.
And that's it. But there's just too big of a job for the number of reporters that are left to try to cover it all.
No, it's impossible. Well, we got to talk more. I hope you enjoy this. I got to let you go because
absolutely.
My bladder is exploding.
Yes.
Sorry to be so specific. Listen, you're a wonderful person. You're a great resource. I love talking to you. By the way, I got to say this before I hang up. This is a man without agendas. Listen, I'm like, this guy's a jerk or he's a scum. He never talks like this. He is a reporter. He is looking at the facts. And I wish there was 50 more of you. I really do.
I appreciate it. And there are a lot of great reporters. I've worked with a lot of great reporters.
Sure.
There are great people here. And
fewer and fewer, sadly, though.
I just feel like, maybe it's my age or something, but Western New York just does not reach, back to Willis McGahee, the guy says something like that and 30 years go by and we're kind of in the same space. And I just find that totally amazing and sad.
Can I say something to you real quick, though? There are reporters, though, I don't want to sound like Trump here, that are just really crazy and do have agendas. There's people in local television news that I've met and I'm like, wow, you really have an agenda here. Am I wrong to say that? It's not a group of saints.
No, well, I think in all walks of life, there's good and bad.
Yeah, fair enough.
But at the same time, I think a lot of what we've become is news presenters. and
Yeah,
not
wow,
journalists.
yeah, absolutely.
Journalists are people who walk into the room and there's 50 people and everybody hates you because you asked the question nobody wants to answer.
And that's not easy, right? You're a good person. You love
And
you want to be liked. It's super hard, isn't it?
It's the hardest thing to realize. And I was blessed with a professor at Buffalo State College, the late great Charlie Adair, who said basically, like, your mother loves you and that's enough. And you learn to sort of understand too that different people take it differently. Some people are very good at just sort of handling it and they never
Rolling
take
with
it
it
personally. And
they're not so insecure.
Some people just will totally hate you forever for asking them, did you do it or something, you know? So,
well, I don't hate anybody, and I enjoy you, and I think you're doing a good job. And listen, my mom loves me, so I'm okay.
That's it. That's it.
Play this. All right. You good?
Yep.
All right, I'm going to play some closing music here and let you go.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.